Welcome to EIPIP Meeting 96. This is issue number 300 on EIPIP GitHub repository. For discussion today, we have on agenda EIP process standardization, some issues and pull requests. Those are new and people would like to discuss. Perhaps there would be information on call for input, and we'll have insights on our monthly EIPS ERCS status reporting. So starting with the first item, which is updates on pending task for repo split. I wonder if we have any update on the list there, and is it the correct list that we are still going to follow? I don't see Panda on the call. I wonder if anyone else has any update. Very well, we can get update from Panda Async. Moving on to the next topic, which is web page rendering. In the past meeting, we had quite a few discussion on how do we want to see the web page rendering. And I know Sam Wilson has been working on that. So Sam, if you would like to take it from here and share how are we seeing this web page rendering and what is the approach we are taking here?
Sure. So I've been working on getting EIPReviewBot to work for working groups. I haven't changed anything about the rendering of my prototype yet.
I'm assuming that we are in a position to have all three of them being reflected on the same domain, maybe with some complexities on UI side.
I still think it's possible. I haven't worked on it.
Okay. Before we move on, is there any other question on web page rendering? Very well, we can follow the updates in following meeting and also on the EatCat Herders EIP Editors Discord channel if people have thoughts, suggestions, and would like to learn more about it. There is this next item, which is need a process for moving cloning EIPs as RIPs and how they are numbered. So basically it is here for discussion suggested by Andrew, an associate editor. Let me give a bit of context here. So one of the proposal which was pursuing as a EIP has now been moved to RIPS GitHub repository. And the question here is whether that RIP contained the same number that was allocated as an EIP, or it should be allowed to have a new number. And we are hoping to see a process in place. Wonder what editors thinks here.
So if we're moving it in the same way we moved ERCs, I think it's probably fine to leave like a placeholder on the EIPS repository that redirects. But I'm not even sure if we've ever discussed formally whether we're adding RIPs to the EIP process.
I would agree. This is a discussion that's worth having here. But just for some more context here, as we know that there is a repository which is Ethereum/RIPS, and the proposal under discussion here is issue number the pull request number 5 in this repository. I just shared the link here. Yeah. So yeah, the idea here is to move this proposal under RIP category because it seems that it would be adapted by the L2 projects rather than the being deployed on the Ethereum mainnet. However, the category mentioned here is core, which I think is not the appropriate one. I'm open to open this platform to maybe discuss what do people think generally about considering RIPs or the involvement in the RIPS process.
So I'm in favor of making a like layer 2 working group. I don't think we should pull them in until we have a more formal process for working groups. But yeah, generally I'm in favor of it.
Just for some context here, like historically, proposals have moved from one type or category to another type and category, and we try to retain the same number. Also, when the migration happened from the EIP ERC repo split, all the ERCs moved to a different GitHub repository, retained the same number. So in my mind, I feel like it would make sense to keep the history of the proposal, even if the proposal is being moved from EIP repository to RIPS repository, it should contain the same number just to have the history of its draft and review, because the proposal is getting into the last call. Although there is no clarity on like the last call process, I'm hoping that RIP team will discuss it internally and it will be communicated, unless someone from the team would like to share here. I mean, join the EIPIP meeting and would like to share it here. But yeah,
Yeah.
any other editor has any thought, please share.
A few things. Their meeting is at the same time as ours, so that causes some troubles with coordination. I think clearly we need to keep the number series such that there's no conflicting numbers, or there'll be just total confusion. And for last call, I think a working group is pretty much in charge of their statuses. So if they want there to be a last call, there can be a last call. But if they have if they want a different sequence of statuses and requirements for moving between statuses, that's not the editor's business. Just as for the core working group, I don't think they want there to be a last call. It's not really relevant to their process. And it's not for us to dictate their process. And the other thing I heard go by is that I think clearly core is not appropriate. Core proposals are specifically those that are going on to the Ethereum mainnet and layer 2. There are multiple nets that are layer 2, so they'll have to decide. Um, 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 I don't know what to call them, but they're not core. Layer 2 is probably their category.
Or maybe RIP, just like we have a standard track interface, ERC core. We can have a standard track RIP that may be able to define their proposals, but I also feel that core may not be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And just to respond to the meeting conflict, we are trying to avoid that, just like today's meeting has been planned at 1600 UTC in order to avoid the conflict. I have added the alternate meeting time in the agenda. We can perhaps get to there by the end of this meeting. So we should never be in the conflict with that meeting. Yeah.
Am I right that we're basically leaving the status field up to them?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I can see that it is mentioned on the pull request number 5 on RIPS GitHub repository that the proposal is in last call, and they have mentioned status as last call, but there is no last call deadline added.
I mean, I haven't had time to look at any of this. I am essentially 6 months behind in the work I'm doing for our startup, and I'll probably remain 6 months behind for another year. But it's just real important that working groups that are actually organized, like the core working group is, and like this working group wants to be, have complete control of their own process.
Sure, we'll continue to follow the meetings and we'll be able to share more updates in upcoming meeting about RIPs. But in general, from this discussion, taking it that people are open to have a working group as RIP, and the numbering process should be a part of the EIP ERC numbering, which I think is being maintained as of now as well.
Mhm.
Anyone has any other thought to add on it before we move on?
Is there any tooling issue with that, Sam?
With them having their own statuses, that's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the numbering.
So the numbering, there's some oddness, like I'm gonna have to special case this EAP because they moved it, but other than that, it should be fine.
Going forward, it's not a problem as groups come in to just.
Yeah,
Okay.
try to make it all as automatic as possible so that if somebody comes in, we can effectively click a button, make a repo in GitHub, and it's ready to run. So
Okay. So we're all in agreement that we don't want proposals to have the same number and confuse everyone.
So there is some ambiguity about that. So Matt wanted to just have a completely separate numbering scheme for RIPs. Tim suggested something interesting, which is that each working group should take the lowest available slot greater than the biggest number in that working group, and that would make RIPs fill in the holes of. Anyways, we can talk about this on Discord. There's just a few options, but yes, I want each working group to have like the same numbering space.
I'm bringing it up now because I can't follow everything that goes by in Discord. I have something like 15 channels that come in, and
Yeah.
I have to prioritize the ones that I'm paid to follow.
So there will only ever be one EAP 123, and there won't be an RIP 123. It'll just be unique, but there's some details that need to be worked out.
Yeah. Because RFCs come in, the IETF spans a huge range of working groups covering a huge range of technology, but RFCs come in and they just get numbered as they come in. So there's never any confusion about, the RFC number something is RFC number something, no matter what it's about. I just.
Yeah, I think we'll preserve that.
Okay. I don't care how it happens in the tooling. I don't want documents in our system to have two different documents to have the same number.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Very well. Let's move on to the next one, which is discuss open issues, pull requests, and other topics. I have listed a few open PIA here, which I believe are the edits to final proposals. We can quickly take a look into each one of them. The first one is on ERC side. I'm sharing the link here in the chat. It is for ERC 1046. It's about fixing typo. The other two are also about fixing typo, and I think they are from the same authors. So yeah, what do people think about merging this? Just keep in mind it is final proposal.
Yeah, I can look through these after. As long as they're all minor edits, I don't see a problem. Does anybody object to fixing spelling mistakes in final EIPs?
These keep coming around and we just don't have an errata process. You want some indication that you've changed things. Some changes are bigger than others. ERC 20 came by with a a bunch of dead links in its URLs with fixes to them. And there were some others. And we've just been missing an errata. And that seems just like a section at the bottom of changes. For typos, it could be as simple as an entry that says on such and such a date, we fixed a number of typos and here's the PR number.
I believe the next topic would help with this. But my question or my comment here would be that I'm seeing a lot of new external contributors who are trying to I think this was pointed out by Dan to me. People are trying to fix typos in EIPs to farm airdrops. So my question here would be, is it okay if we allow this? Should we allow this? Should the editor group allow this? I don't know. That's my question.
So this has come up like before. So if they're contributing meaningful changes, what like this spelling mistake one that I'm going through right now looks like they're actually fixing legitimate grammar and spelling mistakes. I'm okay merging it, and if they happen to get an airdrop for it, then that's a good incentive to fix spelling mistakes. But if somebody's like reformatting stuff or like doing minor changes just to get a commit in, and it isn't like actually useful, then I'd be less inclined to merge it.
Makes sense.
But we need some way in the document, some errata section that indicates that on a certain date, things did change. We have the GitHub that, we do have source control, which is good, but we can't expect the reader of a document to go into the source control system. We need the reader of a document to know that, oh, this version has changed. And
the next topic is actually addressing exactly that.
okay.
All right. So yeah, I mean, like I also had listed this as a separate topic for discussion, like specify condition under which final EIPs can be updated. We can perhaps get there and try to identify the points that we would like to be documented and where we would like to be document all of them. And if that's okay, we can perhaps move on to the next PR, which is EIPS PR number 8034 about versioning schemes for EIPs. And we are joined by Dan and Ahmad to maybe talk about it. So yeah, please go ahead and share about this new proposal.
Hi everyone, my name's Dan. Just a quick background for people that might not know me. I joined the EF testing team in this year in April, working alongside Spencer, who's also in the call, and Mario Vega. And I'm mainly working on tests for the EVM and infrastructure in order to help execute those tests in the best possible way. So one thing that crossed my mind while working on this infrastructure is it is quite difficult to track changes in EIPs. And this is something that Greg just mentioned right now. It's not only software testers, it's also other members of the community who are reading an EIP online. And so I was talking to Ahmad Bitar about this while we discussed testing infrastructure. And Ahmad suggested that we introduce a versioning scheme for EIPs. And it was music to my ears, and I basically set about like writing down how this could look. And so Ahmad and I have been working on this idea about introducing basically a semantic versioning scheme that is mainly based on an EIP specification section. So like a major minor patch scheme, and patch would exactly fit into what Greg just mentioned with like errata. So like if there's a typo fix, you can bump the patch version, but you know that there's been no serious change to the EIP. then the minor version would be responsible for if there's any new. So the other two, the minor and major, I should say, sorry, are really correspond to the specification section. So the minor section would be whether there's been new input or new part of the specification which require additional implementation on clients, or additional tests to cover that. And the major version would be reserved for breaking changes to the specification. So if implementation just needs to change and it's not compatible with the previous version, or tests need to be updated because of that, then you'd have to bump the major version. That's the basic idea. I'm very happy to share my screen if you want and give a bit more input. But yeah.
So I have two questions. So the first is, when do you envision this being used? Is this like a pre-final thing or a post-final thing?
Okay, so I think this actually closely ties to the status of EIP, and this is actually a comment that Pooja made in Tim's like Meta EIP ETH Magicians thread, that essentially as soon as you submit the PI, you should have status draft. And I think an EIP can stay on status draft until other people are working on implementations. But as soon as another team is working on implementation, then it would be worth moving it to review. And as soon as you move to review, you have to bump the major version to 1. And after that, you have to follow the versioning scheme. Before that, it doesn't really matter so much, but as soon as implementation has begun, then it's worth following a versioning scheme so that everyone can be on the same page. So that if you're trying to compare different implementations, you know exactly which status each implementation is based on of EIP.
All right, and so who do you propose enforces these rules? Like this doesn't seem like something we could automate, so this would be something editors have to check.
I think we can automate it up to a point. So I think GitHub Actions could. So I mean, I can share the. I don't know. Maybe it's just distracting to share the link now. I can share it later. But essentially, I would propose that there's a new version metadata field in the header of standard tracks EIPs. And then secondly, there's a changelog section added. And I think it's quite difficult to write tooling that catches this exactly, that a version that a new changelog line has been added and that this version matches the version in the header. But I think you could get something quite close. But definitely EIP editors would have to be more attentive to this.
Yeah. So I think it'd be fairly easy to, require that every time you change the EIP, once it's in review, you have to change the version in some way and add a changelog line. Like that's easy to automate. I'm more concerned about like, how do we determine if it's going to be a like minor patch or major version? Obviously in the correct order. So that part is either going to be on authors or editors to enforce that, and that requires kind of a deeper understanding of the EIP. And I'm concerned that might be too much technical requirement. But if we're okay with it being like author provided, then maybe we could do something like this.
I think the author should be responsible for bumping this, and I think they have a good feeling for whether this would affect their implementation or not. Of course, there will be ambiguous cases, as quite often not the entire essence is captured in the specification as precisely as you might want it as an implementer. But I think in general it should work out quite well. And of course, no one's perfect. So I mean, of course, there can also be mistakes, and we can retroactively correct that.
All right, and I guess my final question is, could we do something where you have to put like minor patch or major in your commit message, and then it just automatically renders that in the document?
That would be fantastic. Yeah. That's not in the proposal at the moment, but that's a good idea.
Okay. I would just like to add other, like we spoke about. I would like to elaborate on the reasoning behind the importance of this, because I do understand the additional overhead to both authors and editors that this will bring, but the benefits that this would bring to both the implementers and the testers, or the ones who are implementing the tests, are outweigh the overhead. That's my belief. As there was a lot of instances where we would be surprised that a spec in a certain EIP had changed. I'm speaking as a core dev who has suffered from this, right? We were just surprised that something changed in an EIP, and we were not aware of that change. And we looked at the EIP multiple times. We just did not notice that change because there isn't really a way where the changes are listed, right? With the EIP that we are proposing, not only there is a version that is specified in the metadata of the EIP, but also there is also a change set, or like a list of changes that happens on the EIP. So it specifies in this version this change happened. It would make that both the implementers and testers' life way easier, where they would be able to know, okay, this change requires my attention, or this change does not look like it requires my attention, right? Because it's just like a lingual change, or a typo fix, or a spelling check, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I definitely see the value in this. I don't need to be convinced that this would be useful for people. I just also don't want to do the work of implementing it. So, I, yeah, it's definitely something we can think about. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm just not sure if we'll have the bandwidth to implement it for a while.
Yeah, a couple things. One, this is what GitHub is for. So yeah, you do have a record in GitHub of things that are changing. And generally, if there's a change in the specification section, it's suspicious and should be looked at. Changes in other sections should not require any change to the testing. And two, this seems like something that's specific to the core working group's process, and could be handled by the core working group, adding a field to the header that they maintain for the purpose, so that it's not an imposition on the editors at all. If the core contributors fail to maintain the header, the core contributors fail to use the header the way they're supposed to, it's a problem among the core developers. Because I don't even know that review is part of their stages right now. I think Dano's not here today, I don't think, but I think he had last he described it, there was a different set of stages that are relevant to the core working group, having to do with where it was in the testing process.
So I would say we can all agree, for example, that when an EIP reaches the final stage and it lands on mainnet, that means that there shouldn't be any changes in the specifications, especially or a bump in the major or minor versions. And only there could be patches to fix spelling mistakes, and this would address like the concern where we like our final EIPs immutable, like they can be semi-immutable in a way that they can have certain changes but not minor or major changes, right? They can have like spelling changes, grammar fixes, etc., but not changes to the spec itself. And I do see that this should, and it makes sense to be maintained by the authors or the working group. but in my opinion, it is important that the editors also are aware of this mechanic, because the editors, especially like if they are aware of this mechanic, they will be able to push changes to PRs for example, spelling fixes, etc., or grammar or proper English fixes to the PR without bumping the major or the minor version, and then the testers wouldn't have to recheck the PR, the EIP, sorry, not the PR, the EIP for important spec changes, right? And like have to see if they have to rewrite chest or change the tests. And at the same time, when an imp spec change happens, both the testers and implementers would be in the know as soon as it lands that
Hmm.
there has been a spec change.
Well, if the spec fails to describe the behavior of the main net, it's wrong, and there has to be an errata. So again, we have to agree on just what the errata look like. If the change is not to the specification section, then it should not affect the testing. If it is to the specification section, it probably does, but the editors are probably not competent to say whether it does. So it's sort of a lot to ask of the editors to look at a change to the specification section and decide for sure whether it's a normative change or not.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense. What I meant is if the editor wished to fix something in the grammar or in the spelling, they can do so even to the specification section re without alarming the working group uh, about this change, and there can be just a small patch in the patch version bump where you can just up that number by 1 and mention in the change set under the EIP that there was this small spell fix or grammar fix, right? Which would be like,
Yeah. It still seems like that's what the proper use of GitHub is for.
I mean, the thing is, as Dan pointed out, like right now the testing team checks the commit hash of that specific EIP. I'm not sure if they check the checksum of the MD file or the commit hash, but either one would change if there is even one letter change in the EIP. Whereas if so even a single letter or a spelling check change would require the testing team, okay, we need to change that checksum that we keep checking, or we need to change that commit hash that we are checking for this specific EIP. Whereas if there is this versioning scheme, they would just look at the major and minor, and if they haven't changed, then there is no worry and they don't have to check anything. But if the minor or major changed, then they would get involved, right?
I just don't want it to be the editor's job to
It's
maintain.
not, it's not. I'm not saying it is. Again,
Okay.
I'm not saying the editors are gonna be involved in anything. I'm just saying that this will facilitate for the editors to do their job in an easy way without affecting
Okay.
the working group's operations, right?
I I think the working groups are perfectly free to add fields to the header for purposes like this. If they
So the
want,
EIP that me and Dan are proposing is not only adding a field to the header, but also proposing that at the bottom of the EIP there is like a history of the changes How does everyone in here feel about adding that?
I guess that's up to the working group again.
So working groups don't exist yet. So if we want to like think about this, either we do it today before we have working groups, or we do it after we have working groups. And today, I don't think we have the bandwidth to work on this right now, whether we want to or not. And after working groups, I think that'll be the time to think about this. But like it's either going to be me or PandaPip implementing the tooling for this, and you've convinced me that this is a reasonably good idea. And then Greg will get your list of changes, your errata table, and I think that'll be great.
One thing that also I want to bring attention is that this EIP does not go retroactively into older EIPs and apply this and try to enforce this. It will only enforce this on newer EIPs. So there is no worry in that sense, I believe.
The idea would be that it would be from when this EIP gets accepted, then any upcoming edits to or pull requests on existing EIPs would then introduce a changelog and the version.
My question to Sam is if you or Panda don't feel that you have the time to implement the checks, would you like someone else to help implement them?
That would be great. Yeah. If you'd like, we can make a group on Discord or Telegram, and we can coordinate that. If you,
I'm not sure I have the expertise, but I will see what I can do.
we can talk about it. And I don't want to forget about this. I think this is a reasonable way to solve Greg's like errata table, and I think notifying people of important changes is also a good idea. So I'm on board with this. It's probably going to take a while.
Cool.
Are you guys in the EIP editing Discord channel or?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think I am.
Yeah, just
It's in the R&D, right? PM R&D.
anywhere. Yeah, just add me on there and we can set something up.
Okay, I'll add you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, also happy to help out with the tooling or trying to find someone who has the expertise to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this EIP. I am hoping that this is definitely going to be helpful, as I can clearly see the use case with the core EIPs. However, I feel like it will be useful for networking and interface as well. I'm not sure if it would be useful for ERC GitHub repository, but when this is a proposal as standard, it can be adapted by other GitHub repositories if they would like to. But I suppose Victor had some ideas on the ERC side, and yeah, just wanted to give a few minutes to Victor if he would like to share anything on the same context.
About providing support for versioning?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think we haven't officially talked about this, but we've seen a lot of ERCs that either has errata needs for change, like what we see notoriously ERC 712, or versioning as well, like we have seen that for V1, V2, V3, and so we were talking about that. But so far we haven't proposed any specific solution to it. I think what Dan brought is something that inspires us and it shows that across the board there's needed for this the kind of thing. And I think speaking of versioning, there's also this concept introduced in IETF, which is called best current practice. I think for things like ERCs that a lot of time needs backward compatibility as opposed to EIP usually go in after half work. Best current practice is something that I think could be evaluated. But yeah, again, I think we'll take it to the broader forum and solicit feedback from people.
Thank you so much on this. Okay. So I'm hoping, just for notes taker, this will be in discussion. People may discuss it on Discord, and of course, there is a Fellowship of Ethereum Magician link for further discussion. If people have thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and if they are open to help us with tooling, please feel free to chime in there. And we hope to get this proposal implemented in the best way whenever it is possible. Moving ahead, I think we have a few call for input open here. Sam, if you would quickly like to run through those proposals and where we are on results, because I see that dates have already passed for all of these.
Yeah, so the big one that needs input from people, and I don't feel closing and I don't feel comfortable deciding until people say what they think about it. Dexaran wanted to remove external implementations from ERC20, so he wanted to remove the links to Consensus and Open Zeppelin's repositories. I had the suggestion of moving the reference implementations into our repository, since they are MIT licensed and we're allowed to do that. So this is issue 287, and if you could either tell me now what your opinion is or comment on it, that would be great.
This is for ERC20, right?
Yeah.
So there's two things here. For one, I think it's generally good to have a reference implementation, and I'm actually okay that they are being cited rather than they are they are included in our assets. I'm fine either way. I want to give author more. I advocate for giving author more freedom. That said, ERC20 specifically, I think it's a very widely adopted, widely cited ERCs. And as a historical documents, obviously ERC haven't been following any of the latest, many of the latest requirements for formats. And we need a much bigger justification to change it, especially the content when there's no mistake there.
All right, so to be clear, out of the three options, remove them, move them into our repository, and leave them as is. You would like to leave them as is.
Yeah, until otherwise convinced, I strongly favor leaving them as is.
All right, how about you, Greg and Matt?
There it is. I didn't follow all of that. We had an older PR just fixing a bunch of dead links. Are these links dead at this point, or
No, they're live.
they're live? So there's no big hurry on this. The document is still totally useful.
Yes, the concern is that we are unfairly giving traffic to these implementations, as opposed to like a neutral destination.
What's unfair here?
There are, dozens. Sorry, just to be clear, these aren't my views. These are just the views of Dexaran, but that we're unfairly favoring Open Zeppelin and Consensus over other implementations that might exist. So they're getting like unfair traffic because the official source links to their website instead of not.
I'd generally be in favor of moving it just so far as having a canonical source that's not going to go away, as long as that doesn't amount to a normative change.
So to be clear, the files would be copied. So literally the exact same files that they link to now, just in our repository.
Right. So
okay, so out of the three options, remove the links entirely, leave them the same, or move them. Your choice is to.
I'd love to see it moved. And in general, I'd love to see all the broken links in ERC 20 fixed, because it's a very important standard. And with broken links, it's much harder to understand. And when the links are fixable, they should be fixed. And we have a PR that's just been hanging out for quite a while on that.
All right. And Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty indifferent on the options. I think if I had a very slight feeling in one direction, I would probably just delete the links, but I'm really quite indifferent.
All right, I'll add your comments and then I can close out this call for input. The next one is ERC 1271. They want to update the security consideration section. They have what I consider to be a legitimate security consideration they want to add, but it is a final ERC, and this is issue 291. If you guys could leave your comments on here, otherwise I will be closing it by the end of today. And then finally, we have Daxaran's informational EIP describing flaws in ERC 20. This is kind of like a kind of equivalent to a CVE. He wants to add an EIP that says like transfer is proven transfer is bad and has some flaws, and he wants people to know about it. So this is issue 293 on Ethereum Cat Herders EIP. Again, if you could leave your comments on here, I'll be closing it probably by the end of day today. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam, for that. And I think the next item here is changes to final proposals, and we are joined by Howie to discuss update ERC 1271. Howie, if you would maybe like to provide a little bit of background, and then, yeah, what are the changes that you're hoping to get here?
Yeah, so background, I'm a smart contract engineer at Alchemy. First of all, I don't think I should be leading this. I don't have enough information, and I'm not like an author of 1271 or something. So like some background information is that we found some weird edge case with 1271, which kind of constitutes like a vulnerability. On our end, like we're just trying to patch some of our smart contracts as well as part of like the disclosure process. Just wanted to follow up on what this looks like. But yeah, I'm not sure like who should be taking this issue, but I'm actually just here to listen.
Got it. I don't see Franjio on the call, but I believe it was a recommendation coming from Victor. Victor, I wonder if you have anything to add here. I don't know if you.
So Howie, can you clarify which vulnerability are you talking about there?
I just keep in mind this call is recorded.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the one with. Yeah, I'll prefer not to
Okay.
share too many details, but it's regarding a replay.
Oh yeah, I think that I was on the one of the Telegram, right?
That is
There's
correct.
a Telegram group about this. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
I think this is not the best venue for that conversation. But I can follow up with you on the Telegram.
Well, I think it is a good venue for deciding how we want to deal with these in general. It doesn't matter that this security vulnerability is or isn't real. How do we want to deal with security vulnerabilities in general?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we can talk about that in general, the editorial.
Sounds good. So it sounds like we'll take this offline. Thanks, Victor and Sam.
Yes, I think just to quickly try to get some answers from people here. Do we want to update a final EIP so that it shows a security vulnerability? Yes or no? All right, I'll call you out by name. Matt, do we want to update an EIP with a security vulnerability that was discovered after it went to final?
Probably not.
All right, Victor.
So just to clarify, if we are talking about core EIP and then we realize core EIP has security caveats, I'm just start to think about cases. And this specific situation is ERCs, or so I think we will treat them differently, right? For core EIPs, did we ever have like security issues after they finalized and half worked? I couldn't recall one.
I'm not sure.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think with one of the proposals, we had to change like one very minor spec after the upgrade. But I'm not sure if that was related to security or not.
And for the ERC 1271 that they discovered or they happened to encountered, I have not learned that. I need to look into what kind of security issue they are. I think generally security issues need to be pointed out. The best forum is a question. I would be okay of a informational EIP, but in these two specific cases, I wouldn't like fully associate that with a security flaw. Like for example, if one of the things that ERC 1271 introduces that for some time they haven't talked about for applying chain ID into the signature or applying the contract being signed into the signature, and then over the course of discussion, EIP 712. Over the course of discussion, they realized this could be an attack surface now that there will be, let's say, fork of ETC, right? When the merge happens, that was an attack surface and situation like that. And so they started suggesting adding those. And then it usually comes in with as a new ERC saying, hey, in addition to 722, the self-12, you have to add these new domains. So it's adding on top of it. It's rather not saying, hey, if you forget this, you can, this is a security flaw. And likewise for the one that then that Dexron has been talking about, circulating the idea. ERC 7, if you send something into a contract that doesn't respond to, well, it could get locked there, and that's more of a common sense rather than a security flaw, I would say, because you can do the same for just sending native ETH. And so in these two situations, I had seen a strong need for updating existing final ERCs. But I'm all for encouraging people suggesting their own ERCs. It's just that either you propose your own ERC or you propose a single separated informational ERCs. But what Dexron did was doing both. And then I think that needs additional justification.
All right. So on this, like to sum up your feelings so far, for this particular case, it depends on the severity of the security vulnerability. And in general, you'd prefer an informational EIP, but there are cases where you'd update the final EIP.
I haven't seen. I would be open to updating final EIP with things like errata and says there's security vulnerability and you really need to change. But I haven't seen a real case so far yet that justify such an important change. So I would be waiting for it when that comes in and then discuss that
Okay.
as a precedent.
Great. And sorry, just because we're running short on time. Greg, how do you feel about updating 1271 with a security vulnerability that we're not going to discuss on the call?
I don't have an opinion at this point.
All right, thanks.
Sam, do you think it would be a good idea to maybe, you know, the conditions that we are trying to specify here for final EIPs can be updated? We can come up with call for input and we can collect the responses from editors who may or may not be on the call asynchronously, and we can perhaps in one of the future meetings list them all for people to follow.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, we are close to an hour mark, and I hope we have covered most of the topics that we wanted to cover. We have added the website link for EIPS Insight. There we can find 3 different tabs for EIPS, ERCS, and RIPS. RIPS do not have any proposal as of now. For ERCS, we have 2 proposals moved to the final to the last call, and 3 proposals moved to the final status. And yeah, before we end up this meeting, I would like to check with the members here, participants here, what do we feel about skipping 1 week? That means the next meetings, the next scheduled meeting, and move the meeting to the odd week. That means to January 3rd. And that way we will never be in conflict with the roll-up or EUF meeting, is my understanding.
I'm fine with that. I have nothing on the opposite weeks.
Perfect. And any preference on time, 1400 or 1500? What do we want to go ahead with?
Oh, what's the current time? Like not today's, but the normal time.
So 1400 is 9 a.m. when all core dev calls happens, and 1500 is like 10 a.m. Eastern time.
I'd prefer 1500, but I know I'm a late sleeper, so.
All right. Yeah, so we can keep the 1500. It was earlier as well, but because of call conflicts, we were trying to move here and there. And so let's try to have the next meeting scheduled on January 3rd at 1500 UTC. All right, with that, I thank everyone to join today's call, and see everyone in the new year. In the meantime, we can continue discussing things on a Discord channel. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.